Hello, my name's Sabrina Moreland, and I'm from the Walter State Library. And this video is going to explain how to conduct research for your English 1020 papers. Generally, you'll be doing some form of literary analysis, and I know that your drama paper's coming up, so I'll sort of talk about it in relation to drama. But all of these concepts apply to poetry, short stories, and anything that has to do with literature. So just a reminder, so you've survived English 1010 and now you're in English 1020. There are differences between these two types of research, or these two classes, methods of research. And so in English 1010, you had a broad range of topics to choose from. You were given a mode of writing such as compare contrast, definition, and so forth. And generally, you found articles in the databases that were more specific to what you were writing about. And so you were able to use broad, far-reaching general databases like Academic Search Premier and Opposing Viewpoints. And you would do a lot of brainstorming and exploring what kind of keywords would work best for those databases. In English 1020, you're going to be really focusing on literary criticism and possibly doing some background information on the authors and poets and playwrights that you are reading about. But there could be the chance that your topic or theme or literary element isn't as common. And so the articles that you find under literary criticism may not be completely about your topic. Or your subject that you're writing about. And so you may have to dig more deeply into these articles to find that relevant information. And we're going to be using subject-specific databases for literature or humanities. And so you won't have as many results to have to narrow through, which is a good thing, I think, but it is sort of a different type of research. The good news is you don't really have to break down as many of those keywords. So you still need to brainstorm and think ahead and make a research plan, but our search terms or access points have already been defined to a certain extent. So if I were researching poetry, I would have my poet and my title of my poem, or maybe you're doing multiple poems, but I would use William Carlos Williams as a search term, and I would use The Dance as an example of a poem. And it's that third element that we have to worry about. And so we have to narrow that down a little bit or expand that a little bit depending on what we're researching. And so in this example, I could be looking for form or structure or triadic verse to be very specific. So that third part is really what we need to brainstorm for this type of research. Another example, and the one that I go with in our database instructions that I've shared with your instructor, these access points for a play would be my author as an access point would be Henry Gibson. The name of my play or title is A Doll's House. And so I could just start searching for those 2 points and see what each database contains in general. And then it is the literary element or technique or whatever it is I'm writing about in relation to that piece of literature that I need to think about and explore. So in this case, I could be looking for elements of feminism or feminist criticism in A Doll's House. So these access points apply to drama, poetry, novels, short stories. You'll always have an author or multiple authors, and you always have a title or several titles, depending on the type of assignment you're working on to go with. So that makes it easier, I think. Back in English 1010, you might have been told, or at another point in your lives in a literature or English class, to ask journalistic questions when you're breaking down a topic. So who, what, where, when, why, and how. And I've just taken this an extra step, and in my mind, this is something I do that helps me narrow stuff down, is I've applied different parts of literature to these questions. And so you could think about who, so a certain character or information about the author. Another example could be, when. That could be when does something occur in the plot. So the most exciting part, this pivotal moment or time as far as at what point in time was this written. So that's more of a connection to the author. So however you guys want to break this down, this is just an example of a way to narrow and brainstorm a little bit more regarding that literary element, so that third element in our access points. And this is just an example of one I've done for a doll's house, and it sort of helped me formulate what a thesis could be if I were in this class writing a paper and examining a play. So in the green, that's sort of what I went with as some, symbols or big ideas that stood out to me. And so you could do preliminary or exploratory research on the internet at large to see what's out there to get some ideas. You could go into the databases, like I said, and just start with your author or your title to see what's been written about that, because you don't want to pick something so obscure that no one's written about it yet. So you just have to be careful with that. But this is just a way to really break down that last element. These are the databases that you should be using to do this research, and I have sent 4 separate videos to your instructor that explains how to use each one of these with the example of Henry Gibson's A Doll House. So be sure to check out those videos. I would start with the top 3 first, and especially start always with Literature Resource Center because it has the most and best information, in my opinion, and see what the others have to offer. And then Humanities full text is very broad, and you may or may not find what you need in there. So that's sort of a last resort, or maybe you're super interested and you want more information that the other databases don't provide. But I would start with those top 3. And just a reminder, when you're doing research and you're using those access points, you are going to still use Boolean operators to tie your concepts together. So using and, or, and not in those search boxes to create your search strings. So Henry Gibson and A Doll's House and feminism, or Henry Gibson and women or women's roles. So synonyms, related terms, concepts that tie in can all be used using those Boolean operators. You will, of course, be documenting all of your sources from the primary and secondary sources that you use, and you'll be using MLA format. And this is just a reminder that you can always ask a librarian if you're struggling with your citations. The MLA guide on the library page is helpful, as well as the Purdue OWL site, which is where I go all the time. Very detailed, great information. And then, of course, you could have borrowed or purchased an MLA handbook, but that's where you go to get help. And if you have any more questions or need to reach out for additional assistance, here's more contact information about me, my email address, my office phone number, and I am embedded in your eLearn class list. And my portion of this help, I guess you'd say, is the research side, and citations and that sort of thing. If you do need help with writing and organization and all that great stuff, then the writing lab would be helpful, and Jennifer Mays is there, and I think the Writing Center is embedded in your class list as well. And then, of course, there is the contact information for tutoring, which can help with all kinds of subject areas. So that's just an overview on how you'll be conducting research for your 1020 research assignments.